Mount Clemens Board of Education to order. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Reno?
Here.
Dr. McFadden? Mr. Monk?
Here.
Ms. O'Neill?
Here.
Mr. Rickman?
Here.
Ms. Walker?
Here.
A quorum has been established. Next on the agenda, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda are citizens' comments. This is the portion of the meeting where you, the citizens, can address the board with any of your questions, comments, or concerns. We ask that you step to the microphone and state your name and address. Be mindful that you have 3 minutes by which to make your inquiries. Also be mindful you may not receive a response to your particular inquiry here this evening. Last but not least, I request all commenters to address all comments to the chair. The agenda is now open for citizens' comments. Second call, citizens' comments. Last call, citizens' comments. Hearing and seeing none, moving the agenda forward. Next on the agenda under action items tonight, item 5, consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, 5A, approval of minutes. 1, January 19th, 2022, regular meeting. A2, approval of the minutes of the February 10th, 2022, committee of the whole work session. Item 5B, approval of bills for payment. The chair would entertain a motion relative to the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Member Monk,
Support.
second by Member Walker. Any questions, comments, concerns on the motion on the floor? Mr. Monk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I looked over the minutes. I'll speak to the minutes. I looked over the minutes both from the January and February meeting. Me and Paul made some adjustments, and we submitted those. Everything seemed to be in order.
Thank you. Any additional questions, comments on the motion on the floor? Hearing or seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Reno?
Yes.
Ms. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes, the motion carries. Next on the agenda, action item 6, student expulsion hearing. Madam Superintendent.
I have a confidential report for all of you, and I'm going to ask that you take about 5 minutes, please, and look this over before you ask any questions. This is the first time in my experience that I've ever had an open session for an expulsion hearing. So we're playing it a little bit by ear. I'm passing out the confidential information, and we'll be collecting it after the vote. Mr. Duncan will be here to answer any of your questions, but I'm going to ask that you take 5 minutes. Oh, here. And read through. everyone ready? Do you need a few more minutes? You're all set? Stephanie, do you need a few more minutes?
No, go ahead, no. good.
Okay. Mr. Duncan?
Good evening, Board. And after reviewing the packet, given the information that is in there, I'm confident in the recommendation for expulsion from school, whereas the parent, per Board Policy 5610, may submit a request for reinstatement after 150 school days from the initial date of suspension, and the student may not be reinstated before the 180 school days from that date of initial suspension. So I'd make myself available for any questions.
Yes, sir, Mr. Duncan. The incident happened on the 19th.
Yes, sir.
And the student was separated beginning the 20th. Were the parents notified on the 19th and/or the 20th about the
Absolutely.
incident?
The parent was on site, obviously, obviously made contact. Parent came on site, the police will never question a student without the parent present. And I participated in that interview as well. Once that interview concluded, you'll see in my notes that I made her aware that at that point, the student was suspended pending administrative review. And that I also kind of did an extra layer of due process and covered the possibility of expulsion and what that would look like and what the state rules are given the circumstances.
It looked like in the report, when did the student come? Because I see 2017, and there were a few issues then, but then from 2017 to 2021, there were no issues.
During
And
that
all of a
time
sudden
period.
in 2021,
Yeah.
from September 2021 to now, there were six or seven different incidences, and they mainly around leaving class with unauthorized, skipping class, et cetera, et cetera.
The student for a time period lived out of state.
Gotcha.
That explains the gap.
Is this student special needs student?
No, sir.
And I saw that he's listed as 11th grader in terms of 3 years in a high school, but where is he actually with credits? Because I looked at the grades.
Yeah.
When he applied himself, he could, get by. I mean, he could, I saw B minuses and C pluses. But then I see a bunch of Fs.
In the transfer of credits, when he came back, he was behind at that point, and we were working with this student in our credit recovery program after school, or at least attempting to.
Gotcha. And since we're having this expulsion hearing in open public, I'm under the belief that the parents did not respond to the letter of coming to the board, requesting a closed session, or even coming up showing.
There were multiple attempts to make sure that personal contact was made by myself. From the start, it was very difficult to connect with the parents, but eventually I was kind of caught them at the right times. The parents do not, it is a divorce situation, so it was trying to track down both at different times. Luckily, over the past few days, I've been able to connect with both parents and explain their rights to attending and explain the importance of the hearing and what the parameters are, but also offer a layer of support. You'll see in my letter that I sent to them, certified mail, that I always like to have a pre-meeting before the hearing to kind of walk them through the process so that they understand. It also adds another layer of due process to the situation as well. And so during these phone conversations, it's kind of covered what I would have covered in that meeting. But they were both made aware of the meeting. and stated that they would not be attending.
Thank you.
I just got 4 questions, just
Yes, sir.
to add a little bit more transparency, because this is a serious matter. First question is, were all factors considered before expelling this student per policy 5610?
Yes, sir. You'll see in the actual log entry that each of the 7 factors are listed as check and consider, and it was done by myself.
Okay. Second question is, were any or all restorative practices conducted for the student per policy 5610?
In the other discipline situations, yes. In a weapons-free zone, you, in cases of where expulsion comes up, the 7 considerations does not apply. You skip down to the 0 tolerance and the rules that have been laid in place to review during expulsion.
Okay. Third question is, did this expulsion fall under policy 5610 and policy 5772?
Yes.
Okay. And our last question is, and you spoke to this, but just for clarity, was a student given due process per policy 5611?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I know you will take comments.
I reviewed the packet. I'm pretty sure our social worker was involved with this all the way through also.
The student was in an alternative setting since the date of the event. I don't want to speak to too many personal identifiers, but the student has been in the Juvenile Justice Center receiving educational services there, so our access to the student has been limited.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Do we have any idea if he's inside that facility? Was there a judgment passed? He's gonna be there for a certain period of time, or they just holding him for the time being, or we don't know anything else?
I have limited information on that.
Yeah, okay, before you go too far into
Yeah.
detail, is he gonna be there more than 180 days?
No.
Okay.
Not at this time.
Okay.
I believe there is another hearing coming up.
And if he is in there for 180 days, this, what's recommended, is gonna be running concurrent, correct?
It starts at the date of the initial suspension,
Okay.
the initial removal from school.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Duncan.
Thank you.
It's the recommendation of the administration for expulsion
Student number.
of student number 18100002035 per policy, and that's a 180-day suspension. That is the recommendation of the administration. What say the board?
So moved.
Moved by Member Monk,
Support?
second, Member McFadden. Any questions, comments, concerns on the motion on the floor for expulsion of a student from the school?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The 180 days, because I know we're in the later term, or the fourth quarter almost, for the school year, is that a 180 calendar days or 180 school days?
School days.
So the summer will not count.
Correct.
So beginning of first semester in the fall, he had to continue to finish his exposure. Okay.
Any additional questions, comments? This is one of the hardest decisions one of the harder decisions that make when we have to expel students, because we're here to educate students, but we have certain rules and guidelines and regulations that we have to adhere to. I know everybody around this table wish there was another alternative to it, but the nature of the offense, the administration believes warrants suspension, and the policies support it. Even though it's a hard decision, that's the decision that we have to make. Any additional questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing or seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Dr. McFadden?
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Reno?
Yes.
Ms. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes, the motion carries. Action item 7. Executive session for the purpose of negotiation updates. The chair would entertain a motion.
So moved. Support.
Moved by Member Monk, second by Member McFadden, to go into closed session for the purpose of negotiation updates. Any questions, comments, concerns on the motion on the floor? Hearing or seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Dr. McFadden?
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Reno?
Yes.
Ms. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes, the motion carries. The board will go into executive session at 6:58. We will come out of executive session and complete the remainder of the agenda. Chair would entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Moved by Member Monk, second by Member McFadden. Questions, comments, concerns on the motion to come out of executive session? Hearing or seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Dr. McFadden?
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Reno? Ms. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes. Motion carries. The meeting is out of executive session at 8:02 p.m. The next item on the agenda, action item 8, the election or selection for the 2022 MSBA Board of Directors. You should have received information from the candidates seeking that position. There are 4 people seeking the seat. One person is the incumbent. Again, we should have received that information maybe a couple weeks ago, Paul, last week or so.
Yes, sir. It's in the board packets as well.
Okay. So we get 1 vote for Region 8. I don't know if Jason, if you know any of the candidates by going to the trainings or anything. If you met any of the candidates, I know 2 of them.
I know the one, but yeah. Probably think about the same.
And it's one of those things where you get somebody vote for me. You know, I don't know you from anybody in the world.
I know,
just
I got
a
emails
picture.
like,
I get
"Who
a
is
picture
this?"
and this little write up on you.
Right.
But, with my involvement, I have, like I said, I know 2 of the candidates, and personally, I don't have any issues with the incumbent that's currently in the position.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But that's just my perspectives.
I concur with that.
None of these candidates reached out to anybody on this board?
through
by email.
Yeah, brother.
And, you know, the one, you know, the two
Yeah, they
that I
send
know,
out a
you know.
mass
you
email.
know.
That's what they do. They send out a mass email out to all the board
Yeah.
members.
So, the,
Do we have to vote? Can we
uh,
sustain and don't vote at all?
it's up to the will of the board.
Good question.
There's Melody Hines from Wayne Westland Community Schools. There is Darlene Pompanillo, excuse me, she's the incumbent. Then there is Angie Smith from Farmington Public Schools. And Michael Swicker.
Just spell it.
Yeah, Michael from,
Michael, there you
from
go.
Wyandotte. Those are the four candidates, and Darlene is the incumbent. This would be her, if she's successful, this would be her second term on the MASB Board of Directors. So that's as much information I can provide. What say you?
Well, we have two incumbents, don't we?
No, that's a different region.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
Okay, I'm gonna move this. I move that we cast a vote as a board for Darlene Papono, the incumbent for the Region 8 3-year term.
Second.
Moved by Rickman to appoint or ballot for Darlene Papino, second by Member Monk. Any questions, comments, concerns on the motion on the floor? Hearing or seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Rickman.
Yes.
Mr. Monk.
Yes.
Ms. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Reno. Yes. Ms. O'Neill.
Yes.
Dr. McFadden.
Yes.
Ms. Walker.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, informational items. Item 9, presentation of NWEA scores and update on progress towards the Mount Clemens Community School District's educational goals.
So there's a PowerPoint behind that you, so if you like to.
Is there one inside, is there one inside the board packet or no?
I don't believe it's inside the board packet.
No, it's not. It was just the raw data.
Right, so in your board package, you got all of the raw data. Oh, thank you. I move around when I present. So you have all of the raw data inside the board packets, and this is just a presentation that kind of puts it all together. So the next slide. So NWEA has been doing studies of the data for years. But in particular, this study is based on looking at the NWEA data from 2019, or pre-COVID fall data, to fall data of 2021. It's a national study, and they're looking at what gains and losses occurred in 2021 compared to the fall of 2019. There was no test taken in 2020. Paul? Next. Next, please. Oh,
All right, sorry about that.
okay, whoop.
There we go.
There it is. Okay. So this is Macomb County's data. And so this graph shows how the students, how well they're projected to be on the M-STEP, which they'll be taking within the next couple of months. April, right? Yeah, soon. We're organizing that now. So if you look at the orange part of the graph, you can see this is where students in Macomb County, the bar is where they should be to be proficient on the graph. So if you look at this graph, I'm going to just grab my glasses. So if you look at this graph, you can see, for example, that in math, which is the very top score, 3rd grade, in Macomb County, not all of the students are projected to be below proficient. More is projected to be below proficient. But 4th grade is actually in pretty good shape. So is in reading 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. But you can clearly see by looking at this map that there are learning losses in Macomb County. Next slide. So this is just some of the key findings from during the COVID, just looking at the results of the 2021 NWEA scores compared to the fall of 2019, and looking at learning during COVID-19. So highly marginalized, you'll see as we go on and look at the graphs, highly marginalized and high poverty students were impacted most, especially in our elementary schools, but because we all know that online learning isn't a way to teach children to read or to count or to be students. So now you can switch. The pandemic scores, and you can't see this even big, but on top of all those arrows are circles. And those circles are where the score, again, this is nationally, those circles are where students were in 2019, and the ends of the arrows is where, on average, students fell on the test in 2021. The students declined across the country. So the RIT is, again, it's the 50th percentile score. It changes by grade level, and it also changes by when the test is taken, fall, winter, or spring. Some of our data will show that our students didn't decrease as much as was expected across the country. So next slide, please. This is NWEA math growth, the median percentile rank for the fall of 2019 and the fall of 2020. Right now we're looking at kindergarten, first and second grade. And Mount Clemens data is pulled right up to the top so that you can see it. All of the other districts that take NWEA, their scores are down below. The districts' names have been removed from this slide. So you'll see that kindergarten and first and second grade, there isn't anything from NWEA up there because they don't compile data on kindergarten, first and second graders. You'll see more data when we get to third through eighth grade. But if you look at those arrows, you'll see that some of the arrows are pointing up. As a matter of fact, all of them are. So an up arrow means that there was less of a learning loss than projected. So in Mount Clemens, we had less of a learning loss in math than expected for our kindergarten, first, and second graders. The next slide shows our third, fourth, and fifth graders, and you'll see that the NWEA data is there, it is available, and the 50th percentile is where we should be. But if you look at this, you'll see that in third through fifth grade, our scores did decrease, but so did every other district in Macomb County. The next slide, we're still in math, shows grades 6th, 7th, and 8th. Again, the 50th percentile is the average. It's where most of the children should be. You can see where our kids are. In some cases, the loss wasn't as much as expected. In some cases, it was large. If you look at 8th grade, we had a little bit of a gain, which is good to know. Next slide. This slide was interesting too. So this has the number of districts in Macomb County from fall of 2019 to 2021 who either increased, stayed the same, lost less than NWEA projected they would lose, lost exactly what they projected they would lose, or lost more. So let's pick 8th grade. So in 8th grade in Macomb County, 3 of the districts increased their math scores. 0 of the districts stayed the same. So 0 districts were exactly the same in 2019 as they were in 21. 8 of the districts in Macomb County had less than the projected loss that NWEA saw nationally, 2 of the districts saw exactly what NWEA predicted nationally they would lose, and 5 of the districts had more significant loss or greater loss than what was projected. When you look down at the very bottom, the green, yellow, pink to the orange, I guess, those are just totals. Any questions? Okay, next slide, please. This is the same slide, only we're talking about reading now. So as we look at our reading data, again, we're in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. NWA doesn't project or rate those scores, but you can see that we had a loss at kindergarten as they came in, but in 1st grade, we had a gain over what was expected, and in 2nd grade, it was a loss, but a very, very small one. When you think about the kindergarten kids, when they came in to take this NWEA test in kindergarten at 21, many of them had not had access to preschool or GSRP because those programs were really limited the year before. So the next slide shows grades 3, 4, and 5. And again, you can see the NWEA scores on the top. So you can see all of those down arrows from where at the end of the gray line is where they were in 2019 to where they were in 2021. And our students in reading showed a loss across the board, which is to be expected. The next slide shows grades 6, 7, and 8. And in grade 8, we had a nice increase. And I'd like to think about some of those increases in terms of reading, some of the math as our summer school program. We had a really robust summer school program, and we did our best to try to get our kids to where they needed to be. And the kids that came, I think, did a pretty good job. I'd like to see the data just from the kids that attended our summer schools, and I bet that we'd be happier with their scores. So the next slide. Again, this is the same slide that you saw before, only this is the reading scores. So in 3rd grade, up to the top, there were 4 districts whose scores increased. 0 stayed the same. 7 had a lower loss than NWA projected. 2 were right where they said they'd be, and 5 districts had a larger loss than what NWA expected. So what are our next steps? That's the next, yeah. So our professional learning on February 23rd, our teachers are going to be looking at the February data, but they're also, what they're going to have with them is their fall data, or the winter data, I'm sorry, as well. So they're going to be doing the comparison from 2019 to 2021, but they're really going to look at the fall to winter of 2022. And that's going to take place next Wednesday on our professional learning day. They'll be working with their entire school at first as we go into and looking at the data, and then they'll be working in their PLC groups. Our school improvement team, we continue to meet and analyze district data. We'll be talking about this data as well at our meeting on March 2nd, and looking at plans moving forward. The SIT teams at each school will also be looking at and reviewing this data. The SIT teams meet, I believe, once a month. Is that a yes? Twice a month. SIT teams meet twice a month, and then our PLCs meet either twice a month, sometimes once a month, depending on what month it is, and what kinds of, how many days that we're here. But they're also going to be looking at grade level data and creating action plans and goals for their classrooms. Do you have any questions? So this is part of a report that is due to the state. It's our February touch base. The real report is going to come in June, when we'll have our fall, winter, and spring data. I don't have the fall data here to share with you because we haven't looked at it as a team yet. And it doesn't seem, it's not really fair to our teachers who have worked hard on this data and our administrators. So we're going to get together as a team. We're going to look at this data, and we'll be presenting all of that to you as well. Any questions?
Questions, comments? Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
You're welcome.
Informational item 10, Business Committee. A, financial reports. Something been passed out, or?
I don't believe so. Bill?
Yes, you have in your packet a one-page report that shows you what revenues and expenditures were through February 9th. Revenues totaled $7,461,684. Expenditures, including encumbrances, were $8,451,228. And encumbrance is money that's committed but hasn't been spent. If you took just what we have actually paid for compared to our revenues, our expenses would exceed our revenues by $217,931. So this is the point in the year where we're using either fund balance or borrowing that we do in order to meet cash flow reasons. And this is why we either need to keep a fund balance and or borrow for cash flow reasons. I won't spend a lot of time going through where we're at on each individual line item or category, because we're bringing you a revised budget at the next meeting that will change the budget numbers, and then that will reflect that we are where we should be. In some categories, we're ahead expenditure-wise where we should be, but we will be adjusting the budget to reflect what we should spend for the year. So our expenditures are where they should be, but when you compare them to the budget that was made in June, which was based on the best information we had at the time, we may not be right where we should be in terms of comparison of the percentage of the year versus percentage of expenditures, but that will be all corrected in the revised budget that we bring you next month. Open for any questions that anybody may have.
Down the sheet, you have total collected and committed $7,461,000.
That's revenues collected, right?
Yes, sir.
7.4 million year to date, correct?
And the remaining 15 million,
Correct.
is that out of grants or
Well,
state aid payments?
So most of our grants are spend the money and then do a cash draw. And because the state was way behind in approving our actual budgets that we submitted to them, we haven't drawn much of our federal money. You can see our federal money, we haven't drawn a lot of that down. We still have $10 million to draw on that. And the other is state aid, which comes to us 1/11 every month, October through August. So that is why we have so much still to collect.
Thank you.
It's very common for many things.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? I know this is gone through the Finance Committee.
Yes, and we talked about it more in depth in the finance.
Seeing or hearing none, thank you, sir. Item 11, Superintendent's comments.
Thank you. First of all, I always like to, I've been trying to bring something good and positive and some of the great things that I see happening in our schools, highlighting individuals if I could, but to be honest, this whole month of February and January, I would like to honor the teachers and the staff at our secondary and Seminole for stepping up. Everyone has stepped up, from our custodial to our food service, who are actually volunteering to sub for us because they know about our need. But just for stepping up in light of our teacher and substitute shortage to make each day meaningful and safe for our students. I've seen staff cover classes, stop their work to relieve or assist a teacher who needs help, and in general, keeping up the learning environment in all of our classrooms. So today I want to honor each teacher who stepped up and worked during their prep and other times to help all of the other teachers to help their team at their schools. In addition, I'd love to give a huge shout out to our interns at Seminole. They created a really special evening carnival last night for our Seminole families and their kids, and it was the kids had a blast. Their parents love our schools. I introduced myself, I hope, to everyone. Pretty sure I got most of them. and handed out the survey and just told them that we're looking for feedback on what's working at Seminole, what different things might you like to see changed, what might you like to see, what do you love, and everyone that I spoke to was very, very, very positive about our schools. They were really happy about the academic support, student support, and the academics that their children were experiencing. So that's the end of my superintendent's comments.
Any questions of the superintendent? Thank you very much. Committee reports. Anything to report from the Business and Finance Committee?
We met with Bill and we discussed everything, and Jason?
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Lindenberry, no report from Community Coalition or Educational Foundation. Thank you, sir. Curriculum personnel.
We just discussed some of the resignations there were a few positions that were filled, few teachers. And we discussed the free program around mental health. And I think there was about Stacy's taking back human resources. And we were going to discuss the next meeting about graduation plans. Right? I think that's it.
Thank you. Any questions of the chair? Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. No Educational Foundation. Mr. Monk, policy.
I will entertain any questions pertaining to the policy notes that were sent out to all board members at this time.
So, Mr. Monk,
Yes,
the
sir.
policy that was in the Supreme Court, is that struck down, removed from the packet, or how are we going to proceed with that? Just wait and see what happens next?
Yeah, that doesn't really, that affects it doesn't affect what we do, what we set at the district level. That's just, they struck down that the mandating of the shot in the face, so that is out. So the court struck that out, but that really doesn't affect us, because at each district level is what the boards decide. So, but we never put in that we're going to mandate vaccinations and things like that. So that really doesn't affect us. So, but it stopped that 100 or more, which we fall into that. So it stops that 100 or more companies with 100 or more employees to force them to be vaccinated in face masks and stuff. So.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Monk.
Yes, sir.
Legislative, I sent out the highlights, or well, the notes from that meeting. There was one thing about the ISD budget that I sent, but then there was another document that is being generated from Macomb County. It's a draft teacher shortage document. It talks about the teacher shortage, not only what we're having here in Mount Clemens, Macomb County, the state, and the nation. This is happening everywhere, but teacher shortages. We talked about in printout how we arrived at this problem, areas for proposal and legislative language to help reduce the teacher vacating the profession, and to hold how suggestions in areas of legislation to help districts hold on to the teachers that they do have. There was an area dealing with benefits and wages, different strategies that is in the draft proposal. There's immediate needs or solutions. And then again, it goes into areas of immediate needs, like for example, to remove the critical shortage requirements and allow all retired educators to return to work without penalty or harm. Just in various suggestions. Fund schools using the school research finance collaborative report, allowing school districts to increase substitute wages and other needs to support teacher development, increasing time for professional planning, collaboration and extending the school year for high-need students, end punitive evaluation for school staff, as the results has been dismissal and led to less creative and collaborative workforce. Teachers need support and tools for improving their performance, their success for their students. So this was the information that was talked about at the legislative committee, and I just went over a few things. It was a 2-page document that I sent out to you, and the other page was for the county budget, information on the county budget. And I'll move right into, unless if there's any questions that I can respond to, I will. Not, I'll move on to the athletic ad hoc extracurricular committee. We met, we have the information, the agenda, and some of the outcomes from that meeting were sent to each board member via Mr. Shepherd on the day before yesterday or yesterday. If you have any questions, we'll attempt to address them. All right. Item 13, board comments. Mrs. Collins.
Initially, I wasn't going to make a comment, but with some of the discussion we had tonight, I actually intend to honor someone for Black History Month, and I think if you bear with me through the end, you'll understand why I wanted to share some of his advocacy. I want to honor a lifetime of service for General Russell Honore. He's a dedicated 37-year Army veteran and a global authority on leadership, disaster management, and climate preparedness. At the request of the Speaker of the House, the General led a task force 1-6 Capitol Security Review to improve Capitol security following the attacks on January 6th. As a commander of Joint Task Force Katrina, he became known as a Category 5 General for his leadership coordinating military relief efforts in post-Hurricane New Orleans. During his military career, General Honore held numerous commands, including Vice Director of Operations for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Commander for Standing Joint Force Headquarters Homeland Security. He has numerous, obviously he's a Lieutenant General, so he has numerous badges and service honors. He's received several awards. He also holds a Master's of Human Resources from Troy State University, an honorary doctorate in public administration from Southern University at A&M College, an honorary doctorate in laws from Stillman College, an honorary doctorate in human letters from Stillman College, and he holds keys to the city in several cities across the country. His 2 advocacies are the Green Army, that addresses pollution in the state of Louisiana. And most importantly, what I want to honor tonight is the Honore Center. General Honore knows the power of a great education to create opportunity for students of all walks of life. That's why he founded the Honore Center for Undergraduate Students' Achievement at his alma mater, the Southern University and A&M College System. The program provides direct resources to African American men enrolled in college and increases the number of certified male teachers in urban classrooms. Seniors from New Orleans area high schools with leadership potential and interest in community growth are recruited to the program and given structured resources and support to complete their college education at the Southern University at New Orleans. Upon completion of the program, participants are required to serve at least 2 years as a local classroom teacher, thus reinvesting resources and support into their communities. The program creates a positive feedback loop for community investment and support and champions education at all levels as a critical element of success. I want to honor that because this is what happens when the conversation about the solution is greater than the conversation about the problem itself. And I want to see us move forward talking about the solutions more than we talk about the problems. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Collins. Ms. O'Neill.
Thank you, Jamie, for that. I also wanted to thank you, Monique, for honoring the teachers. I do believe that the teachers need much honoring and just hanging in there with us. And I know the last couple weeks or since before Christmas has been tough. And I just want to say, hang in there, and like you said, we just gonna move on and hope for better days. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Neill. Mr. Reno.
Yep. No additional comments this evening.
Thank you, sir.
All good.
Dr. McFadden.
Thank you, sir. And I have no comments.
Mrs. Walker.
My only comment tonight is a thank you to the teachers for stepping up to the plate and doing what you have to do in this shortage to take care of our kids, or rather take care of your kids. And I greatly appreciate it. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Mr. Monk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will reserve my comments for a later date.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to start off by, there is a Macomb County School Board's members dinner. The date is February the 22nd. It will be held at Van Dyke Public Schools. The registration and hospitality is at 6 p.m. The dinner is at 6:30 p.m. Excuse me. The program is the Great Start Readiness Program update, and the presenter will be Joanne Elkins, an early childhood consultant, and emotional support and suicide prevention by Nancy Boulay, school safety student assistance consultant. If you're interested or can make it to that dinner, please let Mr. Shepherd know. They have a deadline of Thursday, September 17th, which is tomorrow. So if you can have time in your schedules to do so, that's Tuesday, February 22nd. I like the girls basketball team. Their last home game is scheduled for tomorrow evening. It is also senior night and parent night. It's traditional here in Mount Clemens Community School District at the last home event, whatever event it is, basketball, football, volleyball, that we traditionally honor the seniors and the parents on the event of the last home game. So that will happen tomorrow evening for the Lady Bathers. The boys Battling Bathers, their last home game, as I've been reported, is March the 3rd. That will be their last home game, also senior night and parent night. So if you can make those, the support for the students would be pretty sure to be greatly appreciated. I will be working with Mrs. Bills and Mr. Shepherd to come up with a survey monkey or something to get information and feedback from the board. It's time for us to have a retreat. The retreat would probably be starting a Friday evening. We'll have dinner, work a couple hours, get up Saturday, and complete the agenda on Saturday. So we'll be sending out a survey to see if we can determine a good time for the board members. It will be a day and a half or evening and a half a day of your commitment and time that we'll be looking for. We're trying to do it mid-March to late March. So be looking out for that email and fill it out and give us 2 or 3 dates and times that you feel be available. And we're trying to do it on a Friday and Saturday. Hopefully, we're able to do so. Many of the things that we've talked about around this table, reports from our financial director, reports from our superintendent, there's a lot of information that we will need to see and discuss as we try to move the district forward and how we're going to look 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line. We need to talk about right sizing, facility usage. There's a plethora of things that we need to discuss and that we need to make hard look at and make decisions on what direction we're going as a district. I will be a skip record and say thank you to our teaching staff at Seminole for all you do. We know that you go above and beyond just the normal classroom responsibilities. So we thank you for your energy, your efforts, and your dedication. Those are my comments. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Member McFadden,
Support.
second by Member Walker. Call the roll, please.
Dr. McFadden?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Mr. Rio?
Yes.
Ms. O'Neill? Yes. Ms. Britton?
Yes. Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned at 8:42 in the PM. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.